you got to realize that whatever you're doing, you're competing with somebody. What is it that gives you an advantage over your competition? Whatever you're good at, try to be great at it. And if you're great at it, good things will happen.
Maverick Podcast.
I'm far from average. That's why I had to come sit down and chop it up with DJ Maverick. They know my name from coast to coast and even in Dallas. I use my talent when I'm faced with a challenge. Gratitude strength is my magnet. Close your eyes and imagine. If you can see it in your mind, then you can have it.
Maverick Podcast.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. This is the Maverick Podcast. I'm your host, DJ Maverick. Today we have another rock star in the building. We have the director of operations of Good for a Few and New State Burgers, the one and only Charlie Alvarado. Welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be here.
For the 1% of the people out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, man. I'll give you the most condensed version. I am just a passionate dude about service and hospitality in Oklahoma City. I'm deep in restaurants and bars right now and just kind of trying to add and enhance what has already happened in Oklahoma City. So immigrant kid, dreamer, and a guy with 2 boys and 1 on the way.
Awesome. You were telling me you grew up a little bit in LA. Is that right?
Yeah, man. So I was born in Oaxaca, Mexico, and then my mom immigrated to LA, and I turned 2 in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And so just kind of being exposed to that culture, a lot of bilingual, population. And then I moved to Oklahoma City August of 2002, if I'm not mistaken. So I was about 12 years old.
Got it.
So I'm as, they should claim me, man, because I'm as oaky as any of them. Yeah.
Okay. What were you like as a kid? Like, what were you into? Were you into sports, or what were you into?
Man, as much as I want to say yes, I was into sports, I just wasn't, man. I just kind of big into like lowrider magazines, lowrider art, comedy, movies, quoting. I'm a big mimic, so I just wanted to be not just the class clown, but like the family clown as well.
Yeah. So I bet being in LA, that probably influenced all that, right?
100%, man.
Right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because you see them, it's not on YouTube. I mean, it was way before YouTube, but it's in real life. It's part of your daily life. So, and then I lived in South Central LA, is where we grew up. So.
Okay. Was it as dangerous as what people always say? Or?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, not as much now. I try to go back, try to make an effort to go back about once a year, but it's changed, man. It's changed a lot. Not necessarily in a bad way. I do remember there used to be like drive-bys every weekend, so that was kind of an intense way to live.
How did you avoid all that? I mean, growing up, it sounds like you're in the thick of it. So how do you avoid that?
It's one of those. You're kind of at the mercy of your caretakers. Of my mom, she was a single mom, and so to rely on her heavily, along with my grandma, to for protection and just upbringing and. I mean, living in the heart of the hood is tough.
Yeah,
so.
Definitely. So what were the influences like, or it sounds like art, lowriders. What was the influences as far as like career goes? What did you want to do? Man,
and that's a very aggressively loaded question because I think growing up, especially being exposed to so many, successful people in addition to just people who just grind. My mom is she was a nurse in Mexico, and moving to LA to the US, you sort of lose all those credentials. I mean, she was undocumented, and so in addition to myself, so to see the most intelligent people having to sew clothes or clean houses or cook, I got my first job. I probably shouldn't say where because I used a fake social. I was underage and became an assistant kitchen manager for a restaurant. And so for part of my life, I saw restaurants as something I was stuck doing. I knew for a fact, man, I was like, I don't want to work on roofs. I don't want to do construction because those guys, they grind, man. That's a grind. And I respect that immensely. And I just know for a fact, I know myself. And I have to be very self-aware that is not unfortunately the industry that I'm cut out for. And so I was like, man, I like flavors because I see my mom cooking and making mole from scratch and just making these great aguas. And this is before, some of the great, incredible restaurants that we have in Oklahoma City now. This is before all that. And so to see her do all that, I'm like, okay, I guess restaurant is the most natural path that I should take. So for a long time, I saw myself as like, this is what I'm stuck doing.
Yeah. Did you experiment with cooking and stuff like that along the way? Or is it just kind of when you were at that age, you started like, okay, maybe I should gravitate towards restaurants?
Yes and no. I think seeing, and you don't really know kind of how beautiful and how profound what you were exposed to at that age. Because like she would make us like peel corn so that she could make tamales de elote so that she could sell. Yeah. But you don't realize how rare that is. And so growing up and you're asking restaurants or cooks and it's like, how'd you make this? Oh, it's from a can. And it's like, oh, interesting how you can taste those differences. And I didn't realize that my palate was being formed and built as early as like 8,
and the
9 years old.
expectations are super high. I don't know if your mom, does she make like tortillas from scratch?
Yeah,
like,
she's not a big, so that's kind of the crazy part is that I didn't get exposed to a lot of like flour tortilla till we got to Oklahoma, because Oklahomans have a lot of more like northern Mexico immigrants as opposed to LA. It's a little more like mixed bag, but a lot of southern Mexico. And so we lean towards corn, a little more corn tortilla. So being exposed to that. So corn tortilla game, her game is strong. Flour tortilla. Hopefully she doesn't watch this, but a little weak. Yeah.
Was there anything else that you're like, hey, maybe I want to experiment with art, maybe music or anything else that was on your mind?
There wasn't, man. Like I love art, and I tried to get deep into like kind of the graffiti world, and there was a point like in high school and like even middle school where you're tagging up all the books and things like that, that I thought, okay, I probably, if I continue down this path, I'll probably become a tattoo artist eventually in my life. And when you look back at kind of like some of my artwork and what we call like at that point, like your black book, you're like, okay, I wasn't that bad. Like I think if I would have kept going on that, path, I would have been decent or good.
So you did have like a little sketchbook.
Oh, yeah. Some of it like, and some of it I actually, ripped out and framed it, kept it in my house as a reminder that, hey, you still have that muscle. Yeah. It's just you have to apply it in different ways, not just to paper,
Yeah, definitely. Would you say that sort of seeing all the hustle and all the struggles and everything that your mom had to give up for you, did that sort of motivate you and drive you to where you're at today?
100%. Yeah. 100%. And I think it's a combination of like, you don't want to let them down and you want to make them proud. It's a mixed bag, but it's also one of those where you want to change the narrative and you want to change sort of that cycle of like, I don't want to be doing the exact same thing that they did. I want to change the narrative of what it means to be an immigrant, in the U.S.
The restaurant business, everybody says that's like one of the toughest businesses to get into.
It's intense. Seeing kind of what the owners go, like the struggles that they go into. Yeah. And for me, it's one of those, again, I think at the beginning I saw it as a very bitter viewpoint because, again, this is what I'm stuck doing. Like due to kind of the jobs that I just have to do, it's going to have to be either X, Y, or Z. I don't have the capacity to or the ability to do anything else. And so, you have to you have to want it a little more aggressively than most people. So you have to work harder. You have to show up earlier. You have to stay later just to prove that you work just as hard as someone who does the bare minimum. Yeah. And so sometimes that can be a bit discouraging, but I try not to live that life or to have that mentality of like a martyr, like, oh, woe is me, as they say. So it's just a matter of like, I just want it more than you. Yeah. And so I have to work harder. I have to be more creative. I have to be wittier. I have to try new trends before they become trends. So you're kind of just driven by that. And in addition to that, it's not just, flavor. It's also like, do I want to be stuck on a line being a cook? So just kind of made my way to a front of house position. And once I got to that front of house and I got a taste of it, I was like, I'm sitting out here. Yeah.
What was your experience? Like, what was it like being sort of in the back in the kitchen area, or like what was the first experience
here's the thing.
for you?
Yes, it was cooking, which again is essential. It is formative, and I have nothing but gratitude for that time. Yeah. And so much so that now I crave being in the kitchen because you kind of thrive off of that intensity, that high volume, high energy. Everyone's yelling, everyone's slamming, but you are all pulling in the same direction. And there's something about that that's very poetic that you feel like you're both in the trenches of like, we're getting our butts kicked, but man, then it'll be over. And then we're going to look back at the shift. But so I have a lot of gratitude because that builds a lot of calluses in how you talk to your team, how you talk to each other, how you don't necessarily take things personal. Because emotions run aggressively high sometimes.
I bet.
You know, there's a term we use in the industry, which is being in the weeds, or you're weeded. So just acknowledging that you're in the weeds, but it won't last. Like, it'll be over, or this too shall pass, is a good mindset to have. So, but yeah, man, like going to front of house from being in that environment, and you're just like,
yeah, but
that
I think
prepared me.
It's almost like a good education to have, because then you can put yourself in their shoes and you understand some of the challenges, right?
Yes.
So
when it's also one of those things is, as a manager, you know, the managers that I've had, the ones I respect the most are the ones who are willing to put in the work. You know, it's like, I don't respect a manager that isn't willing to, you know, clean the restrooms. And it's like, if you're not willing to put in that work, then why would I trust any of your judgment? You're not willing to get your hands dirty, your words immediately have less weight, you know, to me. So, I mean, and that's usually the type of people that I gravitate towards, is people who are willing to put in the work, do the dirty work. And it's like, man, it's just part of the gig. So
yeah. Did you find yourself that you were attracted to a certain culinary, like when you were starting to look at career options, where you're like, hey, maybe I want to do Italian cuisine, or, you know, Mexican? What were you thinking at that time?
I think I felt like I had to do Mexican to some degree, but I think right now, as of today, my favorite cuisines probably lean a little more like Thai, Mexican, and Italian used to kind of be up there for me.
Yeah.
But I think those flavors, especially in like Thai cuisine, are just so vibrant and so fun that if I had to pick today, I'd probably lean more towards that. But I think Mexican cuisine is just so, it's such a large world. And growing up, you really don't see it. Because I used to be very embarrassed to say that I was from Oaxaca.
Oh, really?
And even like today, man, like...
Why so?
It wasn't cool.
Yeah.
It just wasn't cool to be an immigrant. It wasn't cool to be from somewhere that most people can't pronounce. And so you just say you're Mexican. You're Mexican. And so to see like great spirits, you know, your mezcales or your tequilas or raicillas, sotols, or whatever it may be, agave spirits, like, or cuisines, or mole is popular, you know? And so it's fun, man. It's been fun. And so a part of me is just like trying to let go of some of that shame of like, man, I hate that I was embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
But I'm proud, and I'm very boastful that it's like, hey, I'll be very loud about.
Do you think maybe that some of that's predicated on you being a dreamer, and maybe you're just like, maybe I just can't be loud about my heritage or something like that?
The thing about that, man, is the word that probably keeps coming back to mind for me is assimilation. Is I think a lot of the time you just want to feel like you belong.
Sure.
And standing out sometimes isn't the best thing. So I think just being part of the group, you know, the mob, it's probably the best and safest route. And so for a portion of my life, I just wanted to play it safe. But playing it safe is a formula, and it's mathematics. If you use that formula, you're going to get a very specific result. You're going to get very safe results, and that's okay if that works for you. But for me, I'm left craving more just fun, inventiveness, and so I think as the years went on and just kind of lean more into who I am. But it doesn't necessarily define me as lesser than, but it's just like, oh, I'm also an immigrant. I am a dreamer. I do work in restaurants. I love restaurants. I am from Oaxaca. I'm going to lean into it. But I'm not just Oaxacan. Oaxacan is one of 80 things that I am. So I think understanding that, believing it, applying it was very liberating.
Yeah. So I know that you're also into cocktails and cocktail development, stuff like that. Were you also into the bar, getting educated as far as the bars and mixed drinks and all that?
Man, as far as like that world, so I worked at Cattlemen Steakhouse, which is Oklahoma's like oldest restaurant.
Yeah, that's like back in the day where all the presidents would go have.
Dude, yeah,
steak
I mean, and one of my favorite
right?
fun facts is that like Cattlemen's was built around the time the Titanic sank.
Okay.
You know, so that's to kind of put it into perspective. Yeah, it's wild.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, dude, it's just like, time isn't real.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah.
But they really exposed me again to like a lot of just volume, you know, cuts of beef, or how they view steak or beef, or how intentional they are about certain cuts, or how long you cook it, or how you temp it. And even though their bar program isn't super robust or like modern day, it's a little more old school. You still see a lot of very different spirits. So that was a good place for me to like, oh, what's that? Because I was 20 when I started there, you know, so I couldn't even touch booze.
Yeah.
So when I became I was a busboy there, became a server, became a manager, events manager, front of house manager. And so to be able to see and describe and talk about wine, and they did a lot of wine classes. And so that kind of opened up my world to a lot of, it brought the world to me, and just like, oh, the world is so diverse of flavor, and wine is such a fun liquid to drink, to consume, and you just get exposed again to different grapes, different varietals. And so I think that's where kind of that bug bit me. And I was at Cattlemen's around the time of the modern day kind of cocktail movement was starting. So
got it. When I think about Cattlemen's, and maybe this is just the time that it was established, it's kind of like a no frills. You go there, have a steak, but I wouldn't say really the experience and everything is something like what we're used to nowadays,
right,
where it's like you go and have an experience along with the meal and the presentation, the ambience, everything is part of it, right?
No, man, and that's the thing about Cattlemen's, and it took me a couple years to really, really appreciate it, because I think sometimes you're too close to the product, and sometimes it's not always the best thing to see how the sausage is made or see behind the curtain. Yeah. Sometimes things should stay a mystery. And so it took me a long time, because I was there 7 years, and 7 years is a long time to be at
anywhere.
6 days a week, and just like watching and watching and watching. And so to be disconnected and to go back, and you kind of understand the charm, because Cattlemen's is a time machine,
right?
And I used to think, it's like, man, you go back in here and like nothing's changed, and now I go back, it's like, man, nothing's changed. This is great. Steak and eggs. It's still my favorite breakfast in Oklahoma.
I mean, you walk in there, you almost feel like you're a cowboy yourself. You walk in there, the decor, everything.
Yeah, man. And it's special. I think that restaurant should survive, man. It's such a cool, such a cool time machine to see that they're trying to stay as true as possible to sort of that aesthetic and that service model, and the cuts of beef. And I'm just like, don't change it.
What's your go-to order if you're going to order like the perfect steak? How would you order it?
As of today, like I haven't gone for dinner, because I think Cattlemen's still is a top breakfast restaurant, which a lot of people
I've
don't
never
know.
even knew.
Right.
Yeah,
and
cool.
They open 7 days a week. I think they're open at 6 a.m. every day, if I'm not mistaken. But man, give me a ribeye steak, about medium rare, 2 sunny side up eggs, home fries, biscuits and gravy. That's it.
What are your thoughts on Wagyu? Here recently, I went to Tulsa for a concert, and I tried Wagyu for the first time. I don't know if maybe it was just my experience, but it didn't live up to the hype.
Here's the thing, is that's kind of the unfortunate part.
Yeah.
Its flavor is so subjective, because you can make the best beef, and there's still someone that doesn't like beef. And so that's this misconception of like, sometimes things just get oversold and like overpromised, and they underdeliver. And I think people just need to like probably pull back a little bit and say like, hey, this is just going to be a really good cut of beef. And I've had it before, and to me, it was just like, it's just this perceived value that more is going to equal, or more expensive is going to equal higher quality.
I think it also probably depends on the place, right? Like if maybe that's what they specialize or something, like I'm sure that has to do with it a lot
100%.
as well.
Yeah. But to me, it's just like, even like people are like, you should eat your steak at this temperature. It's like, well, it depends on the cut. Like your ribeyes, like you should probably cook it more into the medium, even though I like my steaks a little more rare, medium rare, because that fat starts cooking, and and so a lot of things happen chemistry wise in that steak, so you have to cook it a little longer. So yeah, I mean, it's a hot take to say like Wagyu's mid, but it can be. I mean, and it is.
That was my experience. Maybe I just haven't been to the right place, so we'll see. But
that's fair.
Tell me a little bit about you working yourself up through the leadership roles in the hospitality industry.
Yeah,
how did you go about doing that?
So I think Cattlemen's really exposed me a lot to that. So I was 21 when they just gave me a shot, and I think at that point in time, I was like, oh, they really like me. I think at that point is because I was naive and nobody else wanted to do it. And so I think at that time we had a team of about 60 servers, and 58 were older than me.
Okay.
And so you, again, have to be very callous. You have to find your voice very quickly.
Yeah.
But I did my time at Cattlemen's, and I went to a restaurant and applied at Jones Assembly.
Okay.
I applied there as I applied there to manage. They didn't hire me as a manager, but they did bring me on as a server. And I mean, you kind of put in the work, you put in the time, and you kind of let that speak for you. And I think quickly, I started in July, March, April, May, around May. And then October, I was already, managing, and just I thrive. I love teaching. I love mentoring. I love training. And so one of my superpowers, if you will, is how do I take a complex idea or system and make it easily digestible for someone to understand.
Sure.
And so I think that's a big strength, and it's very underrated in our industry.
Yeah. Let's focus in. You sort of brushed over a little bit, but I think there's a key moment there where you're leading a group of people that are much older than you, right? So how do you get their buy-in? How do you get them to respect you, right? I'm sure that's challenging, right? Depending on whatever role you're in, if you're in a leadership role, if you're a coach, right, and you're trying to lead these NFL players and you're a young guy, you got to make them sure, hey, I know what I'm doing, right?
And you hit on something to kind of throw it back at you, is you hit on something really, really important, is you have to buy into that mentality of being a coach. Mm-hmm. For a long time, I wanted to be the best server. I wanted to be the best, busboy, the best bartender. And the sooner you accept that your job isn't to be the best, your job is to foster the best, people are quicker to put their guard down. Because I was good at serving, but there were better servers than me. Mm-hmm. And I was good at serving, and there were servers I was better than. But once you get into mentality and they understand and they buy into that, I'm not here to be better than you. You're a better server than me. But this is how I want to make you better.
Right.
I'm on your team. We're on the same side. My job isn't to be the best quarterback. My job is to coach you to be the best. Mm-hmm. And so I think right there is you have to put in the time. And also leadership is not a one-size-fits-all. The way I talk to one employee can't be the same way I talk to the other one. And so you learning how to tailor your approach, the message, is such a key ingredient to making a good leader, which I think these days is such a rare quality to see in this industry. Especially.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm in a different industry. I'm in the IT industry, but I see sometimes is leaders sometimes are intimidated by their team. And my approach to leadership is I want to surround myself with people that are better than me. Right?
100%.
And some people, they're opposite. They're intimidated. They don't want to have people that are better than them on their team.
Yeah.
But to me, that's a wasted opportunity. Right?
And to me now, it's just such a team mentality that I want to have the best players on my team. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to look at my roster and be feel proud that I was able to assemble this group of people, that they trust me enough to rely on me. This is how they're going to put food in their belly, a roof over their head. And trust is so important. And I was, funny enough, I was just talking to someone today about this, the concept of coins and things like that, and depositing into your team, into your workers, your staff. You can't just withdraw from them. You have to deposit more than you take, and so I operate with that mentality of I have to pour into you more than I take, because when I take, I don't want to overdraft you as a team member. I want there to be plenty for me to withdraw from.
Yeah, and I like your approach. You were saying that not everybody's driven by the same thing, right? So this person might be motivated hey, I just want to make money. I want to get a promotion. I want to move up. This other person might be hey, I want to have the flexibility. I have kids. I'm trying to have flexibility in my work. So figuring out what everybody's motivated and driven by is critical, if you ask me. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I 100% agree. And that's actually, funny enough, a very important question that I ask as part of not just my interview, but an evaluation is what drives you? Because everyone is driven by different things. For a portion of my life, just to go on a very brief tangent, I left the industry, man. I went to go work for the automotive industry, and it was the most money I've ever made. Yeah. But I didn't enjoy it. I didn't feel driven by it, and it was good for me to see. It was a very expensive lesson to okay, I'm not driven by money. I like it. Don't get me wrong.
You got a taste, right?
Yeah.
What caused that pivot? What was your hey, I'm going to go try this? What motivated that?
So I left the Jones Assembly after I was there for about 5 years, and I was man, I think I'm going to take a break from this industry and just kind of go on a different path. And so landed at BMW. Great leadership team, great coworkers, and it wasn't as I went in with this misconception it was going to be very cutthroat, man. It's just nah, man, everyone here just literally wants to make money.
Really?
No one here is driven by I just want to be a good person. It's I'm here to make money.
Yeah.
And so to have people have that mentality around you, and I'm just damn, this is intense.
Yeah. It's all about making sales and numbers, right?
Yeah, man.
Meeting quotas, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's the best players play, and if you're not a best player, you're not going to get those deals. And so to kind of bring it back, I like to ask people that question is, what is your motivator? What are you driven by? Like, what is it that you want? You know, well, I like going to festivals. Great. So you're here to just make money to buy your concert tickets. Great. Let's make that work. Or what are you driven by? I love leadership. I want to learn how to mentor, or I want to open my bar one day. Great. I have to then tailor my approach to you. I'm probably going to be a little more heavy-handed, or a little more intense, or a little more intentional or aggressive with sort of my leadership with people like that than with someone who...
And also, if opportunities arise, you're like, hey, this person is into concerts or whatever. If we have an event, I'm going to give them the opportunity. Hey, help me with the production of this event, right?
Because it makes sense to put those, best players in those positions to succeed.
I like that approach. Cool. So we go from the Jones Assembly, we go sell BMW. You're like, not for me.
Not for me.
And then where do we go after that?
So I did a little bit of retail for about a year, and then that was good, man. It was a good little break, and to sort of follow someone else's formula and like recipes, and again, it stunted my creative growth, and I still was a frequent bar goer and restaurant goer, and I'm just like, man, how long does it take them to greet? What's their greet? What's the verbiage they're using? How are they describing this cocktail? And I'm just like, man, Oklahoma City, man, it's missing so much. And like, there's a lot of incredible bartenders and servers and managers. And like, I have my list of favorite restaurants that I like to go to, but I just I got a lot of FOMO, man, because I wanted to be back in the game.
Are you a car guy or no?
I'm not a car guy.
Okay.
No.
Because I was going to say, for me, being a car guy, like being at BMW would have been cool just to be surrounded by all the cars.
100%. And for me, I was just so ignorant. And like, I dove deep. And one of my character default or faults is that I find a thing that I enjoy and I let it consume me. And so I let it consume me and I learned as much as I could. But then it just wasn't enough to keep me in that, And the millennial in me, bro, I wanted that instant gratification of like, I need to talk to somebody now and they need to be happy. And so I was like, nah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, man, did a little bit of retail and then just, funny enough, I DM'd, because I was a regular at New State for about 4.5 years.
You were telling me that because we were talking about burgers and you said I haven't met a burger I didn't like, right?
Yeah, and New State, man, from the moment they opened, I was just like, this is a top tier burger. And I found myself going back, and I try to keep a rotation of restaurants that I go back to, and that was like the burger restaurant that I would keep going back to frequently.
Tell me about the you were describing how they slice the onions and everything.
Yeah, man. So
tell me about that.
Again, intentionality is so important in how you design anything, right? And so you have to put yourself in the consumer's seat and what's your favorite thing about a burger? What's your least favorite thing about a burger? And sometimes the messiness is fun, but it's also like inconvenient. Yeah. And so what we do is we dice our pickles and our onions so that every single bite from the beginning to the end has a perfect, well-balanced bite. Okay. Good brininess, good meat, good cheese. And so you don't want the pickle sliding around or the onion sliding around.
Especially in fast food, you never get that. Like you see the picture, like it's supposed to look a certain way. And then what drives me crazy sometimes is like, the way that they slice the tomatoes sometimes, you can tell they didn't even like care. You almost get like a big old chunk of tomato. It's not even like thin sliced or anything.
No, and that is what started like why I bought into being such a great restaurant. And so one day I just slid into the DMs. I was like, hey man, I've got a friend who's interested. Like, are you guys still like looking for a manager? He's like, yeah, man. This is how much it pays or whatever. I was like, cool, it's me.
No way.
Give me an interview. So
did you sort of like develop a relationship where they knew you since you were often
man. So I actually there's two owners, Tyler Monty and Jordan Harris, and I probably met Jordan a little more than I had Tyler. Okay. I knew who Tyler was, and but Tyler, every time I go in there, Jordan would be like, oh, what's up, man? What's going on? Like, what's up at the Jones? What are you guys up to? What's new? What are you guys doing? Hey, I've got this employee. How do you recommend? And so just kind of like chopping it up with them and like as just human to human, because he's a restaurant owner. That was the first restaurant they owned.
So they knew you were in the industry. You kind of like brainstormed back and forth.
Yeah, and we like followed each other on Instagram. And so they saw the stuff they post. It's like, oh, that's dope. Or anytime they posted something, I'd be like, hey, I'm coming. Like, save me a burger, don't sell out, like send me one. And so they would always really like hook it up. And so seeing that kind of very low-key, intimate hospitality was really dope. And so that kind of made me buy into, because there'd be times I'm like, I didn't get the best service today, but the burger kind of made up for that. Or sometimes I'm like, man, that bacon was a little too overdone for me, but the hospitality made up for that. So I stayed there as as a regular. It was part of my rotation.
Yeah.
So
would you recommend that approach if like you're interested in working at a certain place, like go develop a relationship?
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. Yeah. And it's important, man, because like a lot of the times, and I have this philosophy now with more so good for a few than I do new state, is I always ask anyone that wants to apply here is, have you ever been in as a guest? And if the answer is no, then I think that cuts the conversation short, because you want to work and represent a brand that you don't even know what it's about.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of buy into what we're doing before you get to be a part of it.
1,000%. So that's cool that you had that relationship. You kind of knew their values and you kind of knew like
100%.
their expectations.
Because I'm like joining the team now, and I'm not BSing when I say it's my favorite burger. Unbiased. I've been saying it for far longer than I've been working there.
Yeah.
This is the best burger. And I say it wholeheartedly. I say it with oomph because I believed it with my wallet for years. You know, so.
And at the time you joined the Good for a Few, was it not developed yet? Or
man,
what?
Funny enough, so I was just like, hey man, all right, let's negotiate this contract.
Yeah.
You know, this is kind of how much I want to make. This is like, you know, I want a little bit of creative freedom, but at the same time, I want very specific parameters. And if you guys allow me that, and they're like, under one condition, we have this bar that we're going to open up. And it was a construction zone still.
Really?
I mean, there was no booths. There was no ceiling tiles. It was very bare bones. There was, it was kind of wild to see it in that shape. I was like, man, this is
a little rough. Right?
Oh man, you kind of really have to like dig deep into your imagination and start daydreaming of like what the potential this space has.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, we didn't sit down. We just stood up for about 4 hours in that room, and that's how I was able to kind of get into Good for a Few. I started a new state September of 2023. And we opened Good for a Few in mid-December.
Yeah, you mentioned you wanted to have a little freedom. What were some of the things that you were negotiating for? Just the way that the thing is marketed, the products you offer, the leadership style. What was your negotiation?
Yes. Yeah. So one of my big, I think, selling points. So I'm a frequent bar goer in Oklahoma City, man. I love our bar scene in Oklahoma. I love our restaurant scene. But there's a lot of things that, for me, one of my least favorite things, and this is by no means like throwing shade at any bars. Like, I love our scene, but it's evolving right now. And for me, I'm like, man, I kind of want to jump on that train and evolve with it. Yeah. And so last call sometimes can be a little bit abrasive in any bar that you go to, not just Oklahoma, it's just everywhere. And, you know, at 1:30, it's lights up and music's off, and they just, hey, GTFO, you know? So I was like, man, if I can change the narrative of what it means to go to a bar or be a patron just a little bit. Yeah. Because I was like, if you allow me that opportunity, please let me do it. You know, I want to pick a very specific last call song or do a toast on the weekends, like Fridays and Saturdays with the, which OG, like Ludovine used to do every Saturday. I'm like, that's something so special that should never go away. So, you know, unfortunately, sadly, they shut down. So we kind of continue that same tradition, but we do it a little different kind of in our own way. It's a little more like aggressive, a little more hype, because we have this really loud bell that we ring. We kill the music. We don't turn the lights up, but, you know, we change the quote. Usually every Friday, every Saturday, or it's just sometimes a thought. So that was one of the things that I was like, look, hospitality is super important. So I want to be hospitality first, everything else second. Can you allow me the opportunity? It's like, yes. That's awesome. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, especially if you're going to be the director, you want to sort of lead that ship the way that you would want to lead it, right? So that's critical.
Well, and it's important also to get people to sort of buy into that, you know, because like you're trying to sell something essentially like a mirage. And so, what do you mean you're trying to just go with me here? Like, we're trying to do different things and new things that I think Oklahoma City is ready for. Yeah. And like I said, it's happening already. And for me, I was just like, I want to also be part of these like incredibly like dope bars that are doing great stuff. Like, I also want to be in that conversation.
Yeah, I would say just generally speaking, Oklahoma probably needs some more sophistication around just sort of the night scene, the bar scene. When I go to other different cities, they really focus on the quality of the liquor, the presentation. Right here, oftentimes, like you ask them, like, hey, what type of tequila are you using? What type of vodka? Yeah. They don't even know. Right. They're just like, I don't know, whatever we have back there is like, okay.
I don't know if any of our like liquor reps will even watch like this, which I hope they do. But it's just like, and I try to be very intentional there. Like, hey, try to bring stuff that isn't necessarily like, yes, you want what's popular because it's going to make you money, it's going to move, but you want things that you want to be very intentional about. Sure. You know, you want to be intentional about flavors, seasonality. In addition to that, like I'll give you kind of a little bit of what we're about is espresso martinis, modern day. It is an incredible cocktail. It's a modern day classic, but I have a very big fight with espresso martinis because I think it stunts people's like growth sometimes because they rely on it too much.
Okay.
I'm going to have it and it's going to be good. And it's, yes, you're not wrong. And so that's why we're kind of intentional about like, we don't serve one, not because we're pretentious or we think we're better than, it's just tonight for the amount of time that you're at Good for a Few, don't have one. Just don't have one. Have any of these other cocktails that we are confident you're going to enjoy. And so it adds to, it enhances the experience of like, man, I came in kind of with this mentality that I was going to have this, and now I have a key lime cocktail that I didn't think I was going to have, and I'm happy that I did.
Why is that? You think it's just because if you have one of those, your palate is kind of hard to get
No,
away from that?
God, no. Because I mean, I can put away a few espresso martinis myself.
But you could go from that to like more fruity based.
But I think
like
it's more so that it's just comfort zone.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
know. And so, what are you not allowing yourself to drink or experience because you want to stay with what you know?
Yeah.
And so that again adds to that. And so that's part of the sort of narrative that we're trying to foster and cultivate is this like, hey, let's let it be an experience driven bar rather than just like cater to the masses. And I asked this question to our ownership team. I was like, what does Good for a Few mean? And they gave me the best answer, which is whatever you want it to mean.
Okay.
And so for some people, it's like, hey, you want to, grab a few drinks? Sure, I'm good for a few drinks. And for me, it's just like this bar just isn't for everybody. And I have to sort of be okay with that this bar is only good for a few. It's you kind of, again, have to accept that harsh reality that this bar won't be for everyone. And as the weeks and the months have gone by, I'm kind of leaning a little more into that. And like, you don't want to alienate your clientele because like, obviously we're in the business, like we want to make money, but it's also, we want to be creative and inventive and not stunt our own growth. And I think, like you said, like larger markets have access to better spirits or different ingredients, or their clientele, their guests, or their market has a different palate than Oklahoma City does. And so for me, I'm just like, I want to be just a little bit ahead.
Yeah. I think it's super important. I mean, like you're describing just Good for a Few, right? Like you want to narrow down like who's the target for this bar. And it's probably people that appreciate more the hospitality, more better ingredients, more unique vibe versus, hey, I just want to have a beer somewhere, right?
Yeah. And like there's no one that we don't want in that space.
Sure.
But for those of you who have been, like when you walk, I mean, even walking in front of the storefront, it looks like a bookstore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bookshelf. We have a curtain that blocks the bar. And so we don't have a neon signage. We don't have hours. We don't have a phone number.
Yeah.
There's no TV inside.
Really, if you don't know it's there, it's like almost like if you know type of
Correct.
thing, right?
And it's like, and a lot of people like call it a speakeasy. And to me, it's just like, oh, it's not really a speakeasy. Like technically it's more of like what I want to like identify, or like how I define us is a hidden neighborhood bar.
Okay.
Because I don't want to be a secret. Like speakeasies like are very secretive. Like they don't put their signage. I'm like, we have our sign, but again, no phone number, no hours of operation. It's just one of those where nobody can call us either and say, are you guys open? It's just come out, find out. If there's a wait, there's a wait, and just hang out. But once you go through that curtain, the ceiling immediately gets lower. The vibe is just different. It's a little more moody, lower lighting, vibey music. Sometimes.
How would you describe it, right? If somebody's like, hey, tell me about Good for a Few, how would you describe it? Because when I describe it, it's like, well, it's kind of like a sophisticated, elevated vibe.
Yeah.
You're going to hear Frank Sinatra potentially. It's like, it's a good date place is what I always tell
100%,
people,
man.
right?
To me, it's like I grew up with the Plaza. I was going to the Plaza when it was just like Empire was in his OG spot, and it was like super grungy and cool, and like Chiltepes.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and it was just like grungy and cool. I mean, it still is incredible. Like that's why I'm there.
But there wasn't much around.
Right,
at that time.
but my like I grew up with the Plaza. I mean, I'm a Southside Oklahoma City kid. Like even Southside Oklahoma City has changed so aggressively, and so for me, my palate has changed. And so now, again, I will do the beer and shot. Every once in a while, I'm like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's go to R&J or something like that. But sometimes I want to have a conversation, and I want to feel I can have an adult conversation with my adult friends in an adult bar. And so sometimes I think the Plaza was really, it just needed that. We have really great restaurants and great bars, but it really needed that like one bar in that space to kind of scratch that itch. So
you were describing having the creative freedom. Did you develop some of the menu items on the cocktails and the drinks that are available?
Here's the thing about that, man, is once it touches the menu and then it's ours. Yeah. But to kind of speak a little freely and openly, it's a collaboration.
Okay.
By the time they're on the menu, they have to be bulletproof, and I'll present an idea. And by the time it touches the menu, it's version number 7 of it. And so we kind of have to we have to be comfortable with getting our feelings hurt, because what works for me probably doesn't work for one of my bartenders. And so, or what they present, sometimes I'm like, man, it needs a little more acid, or it's a little like flat. It needs a little more body. And
that's super interesting to me, because I did notice you also walked in with coffee. So are you a big coffee guy?
Love coffee. Love coffee. Okay. Yeah, cold brew is my.
So you kind of have a sophisticated palate. You really can
Here's the
see
thing
what
about
pairs
that.
with what.
100%. But I wouldn't say I have a sophisticated palate necessarily like that. It's just I just know what I like, and I know what pairs well together, and I know what sometimes will appeal to the masses. Now, sometimes I'm completely wrong.
Right.
We have a cocktail right now. It's called the Charlie Horse, and we went through so many versions of it, and that was my answer to the espresso martini. It's like, look, if we're not going to have an espresso martini, then I have to create a coffee cocktail that I think people will love. Mm-hmm. And so it started off, and I'm like, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and it tasted like boo-boo, dude. Really? It just didn't work, and it was too acidic, and then it was too sweet, and then it was too, whatever. And so one day, because I used to live across the street from work, I was like, I got it. And so I went to work, I put these ingredients together, and so we did it's called a carajillo-based cocktail. It's popular in Mexico, Spain, and I think probably Puerto Rico as well, but it's a liqueur 43 with espresso.
Okay.
And it's kind of consumed as a midday pick-me-up. And so we use that as our foundation of okay, we're going to leave the espresso martini alone, but we're going to focus on this, which probably needs a little more recognition. And so you take that carajillo foundation and you build on it. You chef it up, if you will. And so we took a different approach. We used reposado tequila, a little bit of banana liqueur, coffee brandy, a little bit of salt in it, just to kind of give it a little pop and brininess. And we topped it off with a tres leches cold foam, which we didn't see a lot in the market at that time, probably even now. And people just aren't messing with tres leches. And so I was like, Mom, how do you make tres leches?
That's you bringing, so the potentially your heritage is influencing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really the thing. Cool. It's just and I presented this to the team, and I was like, "Hey, we should, mess around with this." And it's it leans too heavy, this way. And so, but that one, and we have another one right now. It's called El Cucuy. It's an agave-based cocktail. It's got a bit of reposado tequila, a little bit of mezcal, and it's very savory mezcal. It's called El Metiche, and we do Sheila, which is this Mexican aperitif. Sheila is the Zapotec word for woman. So I was like, this is a fun spirit, great story. Cool. It tastes great. And we put a cricket on the cocktail, which these days I think not a lot of bars. I think there's a couple bars in Tulsa that are probably using it. Mm-hmm. But I get it from La Lomita de Oaxaca on Southside Oklahoma City. Okay. So it was just okay, I'm going to use a lot of my influences. But in addition to that, I'm a combination of a lot of things. I'm not just a Oaxacan immigrant, although I lean, my palate leans that way. One of my favorite desserts is key lime pie from Pie Junkie. So I was like, what if I put a key lime pie in a glass? How would that look like? How would that taste? So that's kind of our cocktail inspiration, at least for me, is I start from one of two places is what if blank. It's what if Willy Wonka was born in Oaxaca? What would he do? How would he make these flavors work? Or what if we put a key lime pie in a glass? Or how can I take this experience that I've had and make it a drink? So you kind of start there.
I'm super excited to hear that 180, because when you were telling me growing up, you were a little hesitant to be like, hey, I'm from Oaxaca. Right. Now all of a sudden you're being loud about it. And you're like, hey, let's bring tres leches. Let's bring this element of hey, let's try this experiment, right?
Man, and the thing what happened is that I think it's almost that prodigal son approach is I kind of had to leave the industry and sort of be in somewhere else to really appreciate what I had. Yeah. And so coming back into this industry, I really leaned hard into what and who I am. And I love flavors, and I love my nationality. I love what we represent. Mm-hmm. And just I'm going to lean really hard into that, because again, not a lot of this is an observation that I've had for a lot of years is that you don't see a lot of Hispanic or like Mexican immigrant front of house managers in that role. And so for me, I have to like, and we discuss assimilation a lot, and I'm like, man, no more. Like I want to be not necessarily loud and proud about this, but like I'm not gonna hide that this is who I am, in addition to many things.
Why should you? I mean, to me, that's almost a competitive edge, right?
Yeah.
Like you have all this knowledge, plus you have this extra knowledge that you can also bring to the table.
And I mean, we had this drink the other day. We made a champurrado cocktail, and just like, man, I don't see a lot of people. Obviously, like champurrado is consumed in the winter because it's hot.
Holidays,
and I'm like, and I'm just like, I'm gonna make it boozy and I'm gonna make it cold because because I can. You know, it's just the same ideas that my mom had of like making caldo in the middle of like August. It's like, this is insane. I'm going to take that same approach to like those flavors and, you know, bringing them in. So yeah, man, like leaning more into who I am and, that's like you said, kind of having that unique advantage. It's like, man, this is good. This is a superpower that I have, and I'm going to lean into that and just kind of let people in, you know, and, being able to talk about the spirits very in depth and intimately. And to me, nothing pairs better with a cocktail than a good story. You know, this is how we came up with this cocktail. And that's always fun, man. It gives personality to what you drink.
Definitely. How would you describe the bar industry and the cocktail industry just in general? Because I don't know if you know the story behind Liquid Death and how that came about.
I don't.
Okay, so basically the guys, they were into like extreme sports and stuff like that, which mostly are sponsored by Red Bull. And they were like, well, there's got to be some other like healthier thing that, you know, but they always have to be in the pictures, right? So like we want to look cool, like we're doing something. So they're like, what if we just branded water to look cool?
Which is dope.
And
I love
it's
Liquid
like
Death.
a super simple like idea, but to speak to that, a lot of people, maybe they don't want to drink, maybe they don't want to do energy drinks, and they're like, how can we feel part of like this experience, right? So that's kind of how they went with the marketing and all that. And it's kind of an interesting story, but it's almost like an evolution, right? So I'm sure you see that evolution in the bar industry, in the cocktail industry. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh man, it's happening now. I mean, like we, just like coffee, you had that like third wave of, you know, what modern day coffee is now. Like I think, don't call me this, I'm ignorant. You know, I'm okay being ignorant about this, but like I'm seeing sort of that third wave of like cocktail programs. Like they're getting a lot more culinary driven in addition to chemistry driven. You know, I just went to LA, and LA had so much chemistry behind their bar. I'm like, this is insane. And like I went to New York, and I was like, so culinary driven. I was like, this is blowing my mind. And so to come back to Oklahoma City is like, we have the same resources. And so there are, you know, quite a few bars in Oklahoma City. I think Jones is one of the, you know, the best ones, or even like Palo Santo, that are really, really crushing it, man. And I'm just like, great. And again, for me, I want to be in the conversation of like some of the bars that are breaking rules, being disruptive, and like, what are we doing to change the narrative or change the scene or evolve with it or grow with it? Just not necessarily like, I'm not trying to say I'm trying to New York, Oklahoma City. I'm not. But like our city deserves cool spots.
And it's about challenging that status quo, right? So which bar, which scene is not going to be afraid to experiment? And like, hey, we're going to play with these ingredients. We have the ingredients. Because right now you probably go somewhere and people are going to like, hey, give me a Red Bull and vodka or something, right?
Which is fine.
Or give me like Jack and Coke. And it's like, let's play with like the sophistication and the ingredients. Let me like expand your palate a little bit, right?
And I think also like we always try to like make a meme of things of like, okay, like for that Red Bull vodka drinker, what if we make a Red Bull syrup and like make it a little more sophisticated so that this can be a playful take on this. And, you know, but again, just to kind of go back to the point is like, the cocktail scene is so fun, and I like to try new flavors, and it's always good to chop it up with bartenders and say, how'd you make that? How'd you do that? Why'd you name it that? That's so fun. But I see us more so like, I love a healthy competition with local bars and restaurants in Oklahoma City, because that right there fosters sort of like togetherness in addition to like, you want to be better. But like, I mean, I see Tulsa and like, no hate on the 918, but I'm like, man, I want to be cooler than Tulsa, because everyone's like, oh man, Tulsa's just cooler. I'm like, sure, you know, but like I want to contribute to our city, and how can I challenge myself, challenge other bartenders, challenge other industry veterans, and have them challenge me as well. You know, to me, one of my biggest compliments is when industry people come into your bar and you're like, I see you. I see what you're doing. This is dope. And so That's dope, man. That's the ultimate compliment.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on collabs too? The other thing that I see in bigger cities is that they do collabs, right? Whether that be
Love collabs.
Love it. Okay.
Love it.
Like
love
whether
it.
that be like with bigger brands or like even like other restaurants or other bars
Yeah.
collabing together.
So right now, maybe you got this, maybe you don't. Is I'm actually trying to work with 2 people. There's a wine bar. It's called The Study, and I'm trying to work with them to collab. And so far, I mean, they're on board. Now it's just a matter of like what we create. And I'm trying to work with Tizos Pops.
Okay.
Tizos Pops is a Southside Oklahoma City staple.
Yeah.
And so to me, I'm just like, they're such a great brand, and they had a modern day like rebranding. And I'm like, man, okay, I want to be petty and like, fine, I'll do an espresso martini, but it's going to be an espresso martini paleta.
Yeah.
Right. So how can we make that work to where we can give them what they want, and I collaborate with them, and we cross promote each other?
Definitely.
For me, I will collaborate with
And
them.
exposure, right? Like maybe people
Yes.
are like, hey, I've never had a paleta. I've never been to
Yeah.
Tizos. Now all of a sudden they have a little taste of
Correct.
that.
100%. And then so for me, man, I want to work with people. And that right there is one thing that you see, again, in bigger markets is you see a lot of collaboration. Like you see some of the top bars work with each other. Some of the top restaurants work with each other, and like brands collaborating. I'm like, that should be happening with more frequency in Oklahoma City. And I think a lot of the times we're just like so set in our ways of like, we have to do it this way. I'm like, man, for me, I would collaborate with so many bars because I'm a big fan of our bar scene, and I want to see it win, and I want to see it thrive. Anytime I hear about a restaurant closing or a bar not doing well, man, it just breaks my heart, because it's like, man, I don't want that to happen. I want these guys to get better, make better drinks, so that I feel the fire underneath my feet, and I'm like, okay, I got to do better than them now.
So it sounds like you enjoy competition.
I love it, man.
right?
It's that concept of infinite game. It's like you're not in this industry to win. You don't win at restaurant. You don't win at bar. You're just in it to continuously play again and again and again. So.
I don't know if maybe because now younger generations are like more health conscious. Maybe now they're like, hey, if I'm going to have a drink or if I'm going to have this thing, I want the calories to be worth it, right? Like I want the ingredients to be solid. I want it to be good. I don't want to waste my calories on just anything.
Here's the thing. For me, at least my approach isn't so much a health approach, because I'm even trying to get out of the habit of saying guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
It's like, if you enjoy it, just enjoy it.
Right.
You know, and for me, like, I used to be like, I'm not going to eat gummy bears, even though it's my guilty pleasure. I'm like, I'm going to have 5. I'm not going to feel bad about it. It's okay. And so now, though, to kind of bring it back to that, is that I think our demographic, our guests are a lot more well-trained, and their palate is a lot more evolved than it was 10, 20 years ago. And so I think they're demanding more. It's like, hey, if I'm going to break my diet, or if I'm going to like break my sobriety, like I was doing, dry January, if I'm going to break it, it better be for a really good drink.
Exactly.
Like I don't want to drink a skinny margarita. No shit on skinny margaritas. But it's like, if I'm going to drink something, let it be the most top tier thing that I want to consume. And it's just like, especially nowadays that, the economy is so intense and aggressive and it's scary, and people are holding on to their, wallets a little tighter. It's like, how can I create something outside of a drink, whether it be an experience, service, hospitality, that builds more value in you wanting to invest or spend your money at this restaurant or bar.
Yeah. So. All the challenges. I'm sure it's like, day to day, like your job is super demanding, right?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I think right now it's getting people to buy in is very important, because like getting someone to see things from your perspective or buy into your dream, that's not their dream.
Yeah.
Their experience wasn't a Mexican immigrant kid who went through this and had nothing and is a DACA recipient, is a dreamer. Some people are just like, yeah, man, I'm just here to collect a paycheck. And so it's like, how do you get that person to consistently follow recipes and not free pour and use the right tools or follow, make the right syrups the way that I need them to be. But I think systems are only as good as the people who follow them, or even the people who enforce them or hold people accountable. So that right there is always a really difficult part about sort of this industry, or being even in this position, is getting people to buy in, which fortunately I'm very blessed to have a group of people who love what we do. Sometimes we butt heads, but I think at the end of the day, we do pull in the same direction. So in addition to obviously cleanliness, is like inventory, cost of goods sold, and all the just kind of behind the scenes, labor percentages, and one good day sometimes throws it off, and one bad day does the exact same. And so just kind of forecasting of what things are going to look like, and how do you try to be, and the true like behind the scenes is how do you stay relevant? You know, what are you doing now to continuously market yourself? Because you've got your behind the scenes, but then you've got the future of like, how do you stay relevant, man? Like, what are you doing different? What are you doing new so that people will want to continue coming here?
Yeah. Just hearing you speak, it sounds like you're super passionate, right? So when you travel to places, do you really pay attention of like the ingredients, the way it's presented? Like,
dude, you don't even know, man, to an annoying degree. You know, like I sat down in this bar, I was like, let me measure the decibel levels of the music. Like, is it comfortable? Can I hear my cocktail server? How does he greet? How long does it take? How do they describe the drinks? What flavors are they using? I wonder what build they have. Let me Shazam this song because I want to put this because it fits in this environment, this mood. So many factors, man. It's just like, oh, I've never seen that. Oh, I'll be on Instagram. I'm like, never heard of that like liqueur. Let me screenshot it. I send it to my rep. Do we have this in the state? Yes, we do. Perfect. Can you bring a bottle tomorrow? You know, so things like that to continue to stay relevant is you kind of have to be a little bit of a disruptor. But in addition to that, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That like sometimes it fails laughably, like miserably. And it's just like, maybe my skill just isn't there yet, you know, and I have to be, again, just okay with kind of failing sometimes.
But to me, that would be fun if you just did like a limited run. We're going to experiment with this, and then we're going to try it. If it works, it works. If not, hey, it's like just a limited thing. We try it, and we keep evolving.
Well, and that's the thing is just like right now we have a spot on the menu. It's called the Good for a Few handshake. And so traditionally, a handshake in the industry it's kind of a nod, right? So when you go to a bar, you say, let me get a shot of Fernet. The bartender will know. It's like, oh, you work in the industry, don't you? Because like very few people like this. And so for us, it's like the handshake in our space is we work with our purveyors. It's like, hey, don't tell me what herbs you're growing right now. Just kind of bring me what you think is fun, would work in a cocktail, and then surprise me when you bring it. You know, we'll get mountain mint or we'll get celery leaf, and it's like, okay, how do we make this work? But it's seeing what's in season, or it's like, hey, farmer's market has these, you know, this fruit for this amount of time. Okay, let's take that, and however long it lives, that however long we can utilize it for, that cocktail's gone. And so it exposes our guests to different ingredients that they probably weren't going to usually like try or get. And then we, on the opposite side of that, we have what is called the plead the fifth. And so that is our just fun approach and a little more like devilish. It's kind of our way to hide the veggies in the meatloaf. Is we don't tell you what's in it. We'll ask you, you know, are you allergic to anything? No, I'm not. Perfect. You should get it. Well, what's in it? Can't tell you. Well, I have to know. It's not for you.
That's awesome.
That's okay. So.
Does being in the industry ruin the experience? Because me being a DJ, when I go to a place, like we could be talking right now, and I'm still listening to what the DJ is doing, and I'm like, I can't believe he's trying to mix Kendrick Lamar into
That's
this.
Funny.
And it's like, it's way too early for that song. I can hear him like train wrecking, right? I don't know if that happens to you or not.
It does sometimes, man, because like even reading a menu, you're like, what is the identity of this menu? What is it trying to say? Like, you know, and even like I'm not immune or bulletproof to that level of criticism. Sometimes I drop the ball too, but it's having the ability to be self-aware in addition to like looking at these bars, but you also have to like look at what did work, you know, and also understand that, dang, that worked for them, that won't work for me. So maybe don't duplicate that necessarily.
Okay.
But yeah, man, it's to an annoying degree.
Does your family like, hey, going out with you? And they're like, oh, man, he's going to be taking notes and like telling us what they did wrong.
It's so funny, man, because it's like, I feel like a kid sometimes, like, you know, when kids are like watching kids unbox, you know, toys and stuff, like I'll go home after like a 10-hour shift and I'm like watching, you know, it's like, or watching Chef's Table on Netflix or YouTube and like watching, you know, bartenders make drinks. It's like, I like the way that they describe that. And so I try to Frankenstein my like approach to this is I don't know everything, but I like the way they use this ingredient, but I like the way they described it. The way they use it in this cocktail works. So I'm going to take that and see what I can come up with. Okay. And then someone will come to our bar. It's like, I like the way, how'd you do that? It's like, I don't gatekeep.
Okay.
I will tell you, you know, and so, but the only condition is you have to come in, you know, so no, I'm happy to kind of have those conversations because I want that sort of same treatment when I go out. It's like, how'd you guys come up with this? It's exciting.
I'm glad I'm not the only one because when I go, I'm always paying attention. Like, oh,
dude,
man,
yeah,
like,
it's not a good like I'm happy to have that, and I'm happy that I do that. But it's also something that I wish
It's just hard to unplug.
I just want
right?
to be in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's hard to not.
I get it.
So it's fine.
So what are your aspirations, for the future growth of your career, future growth of both establishments? What are your goals?
The beautiful part, man, is that I don't know. I know what I want to continue doing now, which is elevating hospitality, changing culture in the hospitality industry, and like what it means to be a manager, what it means to take care of your team, your employees, how you talk to them, how you treat them, or even how you develop a menu. That's super important. And the beautiful part about me is like I'm not a bartender. And that sometimes works in my advantage. Sometimes it's disadvantage. And so right now it's just a matter of putting more into the tank of like knowledge. I want to learn more. I want to travel more. I want to taste more. And I want to be challenged. And we will then see what happens with that. But right now my focus, and I'm very head down about kind of just getting our name out there, in addition to like more people should know about the space, because it's hard to put it on Instagram. You just have to be in the space. Like, yeah, you can hear a song on YouTube, but it's just like being at that Kendrick Lamar concert must have been the most intense, high energy show,
Yeah.
And
just
so
the energy of the place, the people, like all
it's
that
infectious,
adds,
man.
all that adds to it, right?
And you have all these like mirror neuron stuff happening. You're like, they're having fun. That means I should be having fun. And so it's special. So right now, like I said, is just how do we continuously develop new recipes while being fun, while like being purist to the spirits, things like that. So I do believe in the you have to know the rules before you can break them. So I want to learn more rules so that I can break them.
Got it. So I've got kind of a twofold question here. Number one question, if someone wants to get into the industry, what would be your advice to that? And then secondly, if someone is maybe burnt out and they're not motivated, they're kind of like, hey, I'm done with this industry. What are your tips for that? Because you experienced both of those.
Yeah.
So I think you've got some cool tips for that.
Man, I think if you're wanting to get in this industry, I think right now is probably start off with somewhere that it's a little more not intense culinarily, like if that's even a word, is go somewhere where you can learn foundational. Yeah. Multitasking, communication, working well under pressure, organization, consolidating your steps. So it's important to learn that. And that's why a lot of people poach servers for other industries, because their people skills are so important. Yeah. And so for me, it's just like, don't let your first job be fine dining. You have to put in the time. You have to put in the work at your more like bar, grills, like learn to chop it up and find your voice. And the moment you feel like you have found your voice, I have this practice, or I used to have this practice, is when at the Jones, when I would like get people through training, I would do a mock service and I would have them practice their greet with me. Okay. Hey, how's it going? My name's Charlie. But again, hey, so by the time they have their first table, they've done this 100 times, And so the same approach is do this 100 times so that by the time you go into a little more sophisticated establishment, or maybe not even sophisticated, but like you work your way up through the program, you become a bartender, or a lead server, or a lead bartender, or you want to be in a leadership position, you kind of have found your voice already. So,
what about for that second person, right? If they're burnt out, I mean, it could be that the answer is like, hey, you're burnt out, you're no longer in love with this industry. Maybe it is time to pivot, right? But it could be maybe, hey, experiment, or maybe go research, learn a different skill. I don't know.
So the thing about that, man, is it's kind of a loaded question, just because like you can go in so many different directions. It's you can take the skill. What is it about? What's your why? Why are you in this industry? Is it money? Cool. Can you shift your mentality to, this is what I just do for money. This isn't who I am. This doesn't define me. Yeah. I take people's order. I lay down real thick. I give them great hospitality. And then I go home. I clock out mentally. I clock out physically. And this isn't who I am. It's what I do. And so if you can shift your mentality to that, great. Do it. Now, that is almost impossible to do, because you still have to show up. Sometimes work feels like work, you know. But then the opposite side of that is you should always network. You should always talk. You should always market yourself, because nobody works harder for something that's theirs. And you have to be your biggest advocate. You know, always learn new skills, always meet new people, always put yourself out there, so that you never know when it's time to pivot, you know, as you said, to a different industry. And what skills did you learn? You know, in this industry, I'm a great multitasker. I'm very organized. I'm a great communicator.
Yeah.
I'm effective at this. I consolidate my steps. I will get the job done.
I can work under pressure for sure.
Correct.
Right?
You know, and so I can tailor my approach, because this table of, you know, this 10 top does not behave the same way as this 2 top. So I have to tailor. I have to raise my voice a little louder, be a little more assertive. But here I can be a little more soft spoken, a little more intentional. So being able to tailor. So what industries does that apply to? You know, because there's a lot of skills that transfer to so many industries. And so for me, again, it's you should always market yourself, always network, always outside of money. What can a job give you that it cannot take away?
Okay, very cool. Speaking about marketing, I don't know if you're into photography, but when I checked out your Instagram, dude, it's so good.
Thanks, man.
The way you have it laid out and the borders and everything.
Funny.
Like, did you just do like a reset and you're like, hey, I'm just going to go with this
I think
vibe,
it's something that I wanted to do for a long time, and I was just so lazy about it. And I think one day I was just like, whatever, I'm going to go for it. And no, I try to be very intentional. Again, it's a big word that we're talking about.
It definitely feels intentional, just like every picture. And then it's all like basically like black and white photography or what? Yeah.
But it's all shot on my phone.
Really?
I use minimal edit. I've got like Lightroom or whatever. But you don't want to go too aggressive to where it's like AI. You want to be very tasteful. And
then you got the borders. I mean, it feels like an art gallery. I was like, man, what is going on here? It's very cool.
I appreciate that, man. That's a very high compliment, and it's something that I try to like. Anytime someone says it, I was like, oh man, this feels good. This feels good to hear. That's awesome. But no, I wish I could be, man. I do feel like I've got the eye for it. Yeah. But it's one of those where I'm gonna regret not having done it sooner. You know, invest in a camera and just like go out and take pictures and capture those moments. So
yeah, you definitely have the eye. I mean, you could tell. It was like when I wasn't expecting it, I pulled out your timeline and you're like, what is going on here?
The people who know will know how much this this compliment means. Yeah,
that's awesome. Cool. So before we wrap it up, where can people find Good for a Few and you stay? Plug in your socials.
Yeah, man. So please go to the plaza. A lot of people are like, parking sucks. Park on the street. You're fine. Like, Jesus. But go to New State Burgers, man. Have a dope burger. They also have my favorite chicken sandwich. It's 1705 Northwest 16th Street. Okay. We're kind of on the east side of the plaza. So check it out, and then head on over to Good for a Few. So New State Burgers is open 7 days a week, and Good for a Few is open Wednesday to Saturday, 4 to midnight. And so we won't go super into the house rules, but one of our house rules is at last call, we do offer what is called a Pacino. It's kind of our take on a boozy affogato. So it's coffee brandy with vanilla bean ice cream. You can only order at last call. It's such a great sipper.
Amazing.
Yeah, man. And we usually blast the music, especially on the weekends, like Friday, Saturday night. We like to send people off with a really just warm goodbye. Okay. But yeah, man, find yourself in the plaza. Be intentional about making a trip out there. I'm confident that people will have an incredible time.
Cool. What if people want to follow you? I don't know if your social media is like open to everybody
it's open,
or not,
public,
but if you want to plug it in.
You can follow me at CharlieBoy138.
Okay, perfect.
Follow me. It's all tasteful stuff, man.
Yeah.
It's foods I like, drinks I like, memes that I think are funny, and just every once in a while I'll post that on that grid.
Yeah. And the Charlie horse, is that like kind of like your signature drink or what?
I mean, it's one of our signature drinks. It's the one I'm probably the most proud of, just because, again, it's a little bit disruptive. And rise of today, it's our #1 seller for a reason. I think it scratches the itch of that.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you for your time, man.
No,
I definitely
bro, thanks for
enjoyed
having me, man.
We touched a little bit of everything, so anytime you want to come back, you're always welcome.
Say when, my friend.
All right. There you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, the super talented Charlie Alvarado right here on the Maverick Podcast. In dreams, we trust.